Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum. This is Iman Ali from Dinar Standard, and I give you a warm welcome to our session today. Before we begin with this exciting launch of the State of the Global Islamic Economy Report 2020-2021 in Australia, let's give some time to our attendees to join us, and we'll get started in a moment. Thank you all. Okay, let's begin. COVID-19 investments signals the future Islamic economy. Assalamu alaikum and greetings of peace and blessings to everyone. This is Iman Ali from Dinar Standard, and I'm humbled to be part of the report authoring the special features on Gen Z, women entrepreneur, and tech case studies. I welcome you all to the launch of the Islamic Economy Report 2019 and 2020, the official Australia launch of the report. Thank you all for joining, and special thanks to our prestige panelists and speakers for today for joining as well. This report is produced by Dinar Standard, supported by the Dubai Islamic Economy Development Center in partnership with Salam Gateway. And a special thanks and acknowledgement to our launch host partners for today's event, Mecca Collective and Crescent Wealth. Thanks a lot for being our partners, and thank you all once again for joining us. Okay, so despite the pandemic, we were able to launch the one-of-its-kind report this year, the State of the Global Islamic Economy Report 2019 and 2020. Well, I'm actually giving the wrong reference to the year. It's 2020 and 2021. That's right. And with a series of events, over 13 plus launch events, both hybrid and online this year. Well, that you heard me right, over 13 plus launch events. And we are honored to be launching today in Australia. So are you curious to know where have we launched and where else do we plan to launch next? So let me show you a quick video, and in a way it will help us get the hype and the excitement for today. So bear with me, and I'm going to show you this exciting video for today. Okay, I just want to make sure with my teammates, were you able to see the video? Were you? Okay, you were. Great, thanks a lot. Thanks for the confirmation. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Great, so are you excited now for the event? Now you must be wondering, there are pieces missing. That's right, because we have many more exciting events coming up. And for that reason, we encourage you to stay tuned on Salam Gateway to know more about our launch events. So follow us on social media, and you can also get on salamgateway.com/SGIE 20-21 to sign up for our other events as well. And actually, if any of your friends or colleagues are not online for this launch event, you got to tell them that we are launching the report in Australia. Okay, so without further ado, let me get you to the agenda for today. We have a lot of excitement and exciting speeches, presentations lined up for today. So to begin with the welcome, which I did, and followed by the welcome remarks by Mr. Abdullah Awar, CEO of Dubai Islamic Economy Development Center, followed by the report presentation, the State of the Global Islamic Economy 2020 and 2021 report key insights, and the Australian context, presented to you by Dr. Syed Farouk, our senior partner at Dinar Standard. and Mr. Rafiuddin Shiko, CEO at Dinar Standard, followed by Australian Islamic Finance Opportunity presentation by Professor Talal Yassin, Managing Director of Crescent Wealth. And then we have the Australian Muslim Entrepreneurship and Venture Capital presentation brought to you by Zain Ismail Kazi, co-founder of Mecca Collective. And finally, we have our prestige panelists who will join us to discuss the Islamic economy. This would be moderated by Nirvan Jamshed Pei, co-founder of Mecca Collective. And our panelists are Zulfia Tufa, founder of Mode Market, Peter Gold, founder of Gold Studio, Kelisha Bennett, founder of Developing Diamonds, and finally, Zain Ismail Kazi, co-founder of Mecca Collective. All right, so without a further ado, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Abdullah Awar, CEO of the Dubai Islamic Economy Development Center, to kindly present his remarks. Thanks a lot. Mr. Abdullah, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Iman. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh, everyone. Good evening to our friends in Australia and East Asia. Good afternoon to those in the Middle East, and good morning to those joining us, of course, from the West today. I believe this is the beauty of technology. You know, everyone around the world can get together. You know, despite the pandemic and the challenging year that we have faced. No, I'm really excited about today's launch. I'm actually very excited about all the launches that we have done for the State of the Global Islamic Economy report this year. I believe it sheds light on very interesting aspects with regards to the Islamic economy and the sectors and how they would fare as well in 2020 and beyond. I wanted to take this opportunity, of course, to extend my thanks as well to our co-hosts today, specifically Professor Talal Yassin from Crescent Wealth and Mr. Zain Zaki of Mecca Collective. Thank you for co-hosting the launch today. My good friend, Dr. Saeed Farouk, who I see here, and Rafiuddin as well, both of whom, by the way, have started this initiative way before I even joined and before the Dubai Islamic Economy Development Center was created. I think it's exciting to see where we stand today. In my opinion, this report has become a very important resource when it comes to the Islamic economy, the growth opportunities, as I'm sure you will notice when you go through it. Australia, I believe, has played a very important role in shaping up the global Islamic economy sectors. It continues to be always featured in the Islamic Economy Indicator, and that's no surprise. It plays an important role, and the Australian companies play today an important role in the value chain for some of the key sectors and products on the Islamic economy, such as the halal industry. So I'm very excited to hear the thoughts from the esteemed panelists today. I believe when we first, as far as the Dubai Islamic Economy Development Center is concerned and Dubai is concerned, when we first embarked on this vision itself of His Highness, to us the term Islamic economy also was a strange term, ironically. But today, sitting here with you all, I realize the importance of these sectors and how they are contributing to shaping and complementing economic ecosystems around the globe. For us in Dubai, we have witnessed that over the last few years. We can comfortably say now that the Islamic economy sectors are playing an important role and contributing to the national GDP of Dubai, and we are tracing that continuously. And I'm sure it's doing that across other jurisdictions as well. The report, although I'm sure you will notice that it highlights very strong figures in 2019, the interesting component or aspect of it for me was that it also provides kind of a forecast for 2020 and how the sectors would fare in 2020. But I think we all can agree that given the pandemic and given this challenging year in 2020, some of these sectors are well positioned to help us push through and even identify new means of sustaining the economy on a longer term. I didn't want to take a lot of your time. Obviously, it's an exciting agenda ahead of us. I wanted to again thank Dinar Standard, as always, for supporting the research and the information and disseminating information that is quite important, I think, for both the government and public sectors, the public and private sectors to gain from. And I wanted to thank you all as well for joining us. And I wish you the best of success. And I hope you enjoy the sessions that are coming ahead of us. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Abdullah, for your kind words and for enlightening our launch today. So without further ado, let's get to the second part of our agenda, which is the State of the Global Islamic Economy Report 2020-21 Key Insights and Australian Context, presented to you by Dr. Syed Farouk, Senior Partner at Dinar Standard, and Mr. Rafiuddin Shiko, CEO of Dinar Standard. Sirs, the screen is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we're going to, yes, we're going to start with a short summary video about the report, and then Dr. Syed, you will lead us off, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum and peace be upon all of you. The 8th edition of the State of the Global Islamic Economy report estimates $2.02 trillion of Muslim consumer spending across halal food, pharma, cosmetics, travel, apparel, and media in 2019. Islamic finance assets, meanwhile, stood at $2.88 trillion.
In the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, the report forecasts an 8% drop in global Muslim spending in 2020, with the travel sector being hit the worst and halal food faring the best. Spending is forecasted to rebound and reach $2.3 trillion in 2024.
The report covers special features on Gen Z views in the Islamic economy, successful women entrepreneurs, and 7 tech case studies accelerating digital transformation in the new normal.
The report's country benchmarking tool, the GIE indicator, ranks the most developed Islamic economy ecosystems. Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Indonesia lead the rankings among the 81 countries covered this year.
Investments in the Islamic economy totaled $11.8 billion in 2019-20, a decline of 13% over the previous period. At 54%, over half of total investments were in halal products, while Islamic finance drew another 42%.
Amidst the pandemic, our analysis shows that the Islamic economy is thriving in uncertainty. The report has identified 33 key signals of opportunities. In the lifestyle sectors, travel, tech, and online entertainment are the key signals.
In Islamic finance, while the sector struggles to bring back its double-digit growth days, accelerate digital transformation, and social finance and ESG aspects are driving key opportunities. These key signals include tokenization of sukuk and Islamic social finance.
In 2019, the global trade of halal food, pharma, and cosmetics was estimated at $200 billion, and the key opportunities area include food security investments, agri and food tech, and healthy food.
Thank you very much. Bismillah. We'll start off, Dr. Sayed, if you'd please lead us off with a short presentation for the group.
Thank you, Iman. Thank you, Abdullah Al-Awar, and thank you, Rafid Shiko. I have to say that the energy is infectious, and thank you for sharing, giving me the chance to share this opportunity to launch the State of the Islamic Economy in Global Islamic Economy in Australia, my home country. But in addition to that, of course, one of the major players in the Islamic economy in the long term. One of the things that I did want to mention, what's powerful of this opportunity is that, and this panel is that I look back to 2012 when this was launched. At the end of 2012, was His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum launched this initiative. It was a huge shock to a lot of people. A pleasant shock, and I remember the context in which I spoke to my brother Rafidin Shiko when he was launching this initiative with me, with the report itself. At that time, we had an estimate of Islamic finance assets at 1.354 trillion, right? Just to give you some context. And we were hoping, as I was in Thomson Reuters managing the reports around the Islamic finance development indicators, we were hoping that Islamic finance would probably reach at that time something like 2.2 trillion by, and in our pretty, I guess, ambitious estimates of 2.2 trillion from 1.35 trillion. Believe it or not, it's blown that away, and it's actually achieved 2.8 trillion. So, I mean, I guess the bigger picture in this, and that's why this is so energizing, is that this is real and it's happening. And there is a huge momentum happening all over the world associated with the Islamic economy. The question is, how do you capture it? The question is, how do Australian companies, institutions capture this opportunity? Because it's not just a straightforward and easy exercise. And really, the Dinar Standard has made it quite easy to understand the customers, understand the market. And what I'd like to cover with you here, if you go to the next slide, is really how this sector has been defined. What would like to also show you, thank you for sharing a number of the partners who've made this possible with us, besides Dubai Islamic Economy Development Center, Ifanka, CIMB, Crescent Wealth in Australia, Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, UNHCR, Refinitiv. All of these institutions have provided special contributions that have actually helped us navigate the Islamic economy in the specific context. In addition to that, as you know, we launched this report in 13 countries. That was phenomenal. I think that this year was a record. Every year we keep on continuing to expand the reach of this. We might have Hawaii next year at the rate at which we're going. But this is the opportunity that the Islamic economy, it is really does not care about religion. It doesn't care about location. It just is available to everyone. And I think that's the key takeaway for all of us. The report itself has been a fairly well-researched exercise that's taken essentially the entire year. On an ongoing basis, the team are the most substantive research professionals that I've ever come across with respect to the Islamic economy. They have 52 industry professionals who have actually been interviewed across all sectors. The team itself has 16 team members all over the world, and I've met them and I've worked with them in several contexts that actually collect on-the-ground data that for the whole period, using really raw customer insights from each of those countries. And you'll be able to see that if you download the report in specific contexts. And a lot of those are there's more than 450 stories that are referenced in the report that we collect, both from online, but also from real life examples. I think the key thing to mention about the report and its approach has been this approach that you see here in front of us has been a consistent approach we've applied since 2012. Of course, we've added some new context to it, including the impact of COVID, which has obviously affected every industry and every sector in the world. But in addition to that, of course, it's been it's still a consistently valuable opportunity. One of the other things that we also cover in this report, which is really unique, is that we've started tracking the investments into the Islamic economy across the world, both in halal food, halal production, and in Islamic finance and beyond that as well. As you know, there from where we've stood and to where we are now, we've had a huge uptick in terms of interest, but also transactions across the spectrum. In terms of some special features, and I think this is unique, and then you'll see this and you'll hear this from some of our sisters who are panelists on this call, including sisters Zofia and Kalisha. There is a lot of energy coming from women entrepreneurs in Islamic economy, and it speaks to the underlying opportunity that the Islamic economy presents. And we see this in Indonesia, we see this in Australia, we see this in the US, and we see this in all over the Islamic world as well. And we showcase that in a very visible way in the report. Finally, with respect to the detailed sectors, I'm sure you've seen that, but one of the things that we cover in this report that's really unique is, and something that we started from last year onwards, was really trying to figure out, what are the faint but really powerful signals that are coming about all over the Islamic world that are worthy of consideration by us. They may not be trends as of now, they may not be mega trends, but the signals tell us about what the future is going to hold. And they may not come about as well, but there certainly is something for us to learn from it. And that's something that we'll hopefully share with you to give you greater insight into where we should perhaps investigate and put more effort in terms of research and also in terms of our transactions. Finally, one of the other interesting things that we have covered in the report, which is really exciting, is the strategic considerations for investors, governments, and businesses. I think entering this market is a challenging one. People don't understand it, and it's quite there are a number of nuances. Unless you're a Muslim, unless you have specific in-sector analysis, you don't get an exposure to it necessarily all the time. And that's why, as a Muslim, many of you would understand it. As a non-Muslim, it's challenging sometimes to understand it, but it is certainly rewarding. And so in 2013, when we launched the first report, the definition of it was something that was really critical to us, because you could cover a lot of things and you could not cover a lot of things. For us, our definition and our scope, as per the report and as per everyone who's got common consensus over it, it's not about economic paradigms, but it is about economic sectors whose core products and services are structurally affected by the practice of the religion, right? Whether it's Islamic ethics or it's Islamic law. And the practice of the religion, as you know, particularly affects a few things, and it doesn't affect many things. And therefore, this is focusing only on the ones that are affected by Islamic ethics and law. Now, where are we as an industry, and where are we as an Islamic economy? As I said before, I'm really shocked when I see these numbers. Not because, and in a pleasant way, not because they're bad numbers. In fact, they're amazing numbers. I'm shocked by how fast it's grown, and that kind of speaks to the broader global Islamic economy opportunity that really anyone in the world can tap, but it's not straightforward and easy. And this, the fact that we have Islamic finance assets that's grown by 2 times, and halal food that's also grown by about 2 times, tells, in a space of about 7 years, it tells you that there's certainly something here worth looking at. And as you can see from the rates of return, we are conservatively projecting a 5% cumulative average growth rate over the next 5 years, next 4 years. That despite the fact that there's been a COVID hit in the past few years, even though despite that there's been an 8.1% decline, we believe that the Islamic economy is going to bounce back in a significant way in the next few years. And as you know very well, the fundamental hit that's affected us, and you see the bounce back even in Dubai, as this the capital of the global Islamic economy, has been to travel, right? Tourism has been dramatically affected, and we all expected that. In addition to that, there's been also an effect on a number of other sectors, including entertainment and food production and the like. And particularly in terms of the supply chain. I will pass it on to my colleague, Rafiuddin Shiko, who's done a great job in actually pulling together some great insights from all across the Gen Z and Muslim entrepreneurship space.
Thank you, dear friend and colleague, Dr. Syed. To move forward, we're excited to share with you the insights this year from Generation Z on their views from across the world, by the way, on how they see these different sectors, how these the next generation, Gen Z, is shaping. And in fact, they are the driving force now, one of the key driving force in the growth and development. So what are their views on finance or Islamic finance? What are their views on halal food, modest fashion, media, recreation? And we feel the industry will really find this insightful, and it's great to have their voice represented strongly. And as Dr. Syed said, we're very excited to showcase the exciting development of entrepreneurship across the world by women entrepreneurs championing and driving a lot of the developments in the Islamic economy. We're excited to have some of you on the panel later today. The importance of, especially with this post-COVID new normal, the acceleration of digital transformation, we've really highlighted a lot of the developing technology trends, as well as some key case studies covering each of the sectors that are covered in the report. Now, one of the key tools in the report that serves the purpose of country level or government level benchmarking is our Global Islamic Economy indicator, the GI indicator. And this year, consistently, as we have since the launch of the report, Malaysia has led this ranking. This year, we see Saudi Arabia that has come up the ranking to number 2, followed by UAE, and Indonesia as well at 4, which has also further grown in its ranking. Couple of key things I'd like to highlight here is that our methodology, obviously rankings are a function of how you rank them. So the overall purpose of the ranking is, first of all, to show how countries, how strong is their ecosystem to support the development of Islamic economy. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're all financially performing the strongest or the biggest economy on the size of the economy only. It's, in fact, we have 4 key criteria. One of them is financial performance. Second is regulatory environment. Third is how much of an awareness they've built as an ecosystem in the country. And fourth is social impact. So we use these 4 parameters. There are 49 metrics that go into this ranking. And then we rank those metrics across these 7 key sectors. And so the ranking is based on these criteria. 2 more important points. Number 1, they're relative to the size of the country. So it doesn't mean the biggest country will always be the top country on the ranking. It's how strong you are as a country relative to the size of your country. And then the second key point is the ranking is weighted to those sectors that are bigger in size in terms of this Islamic economy space. So this ranking has 56% weightage this year on Islamic finance. And so this is a key point to mention, followed by halal food, which is about 24% in the ranking today. So these are important consideration to know, and you can see why and how the different countries rank. There are 81 countries evaluated, and Australia this year is 31st in the overall ranking. But as you will see in our later presentation of Australia's actual numbers across metrics, and some of them on food and others, Australia is in fact in the top 10 in many of those cases. This year, we've done the most extensive analysis of investments as well. And with 11.8, key thing is food and finance represent over 90% of the investments that have happened. And still there's a lot of room for growth on the lifestyle sectors, but these 2 are driving investment activity. M&A and VC are the key type of investments, and 6% private equity. In terms of countries, I think from an Australia point of view, you can see Southeast Asia with Indonesia and Malaysia are the key markets where investments in this space are happening as well. And from my side to conclude, as Dr. Syed said, we have identified key signals. I'll just highlight 2 key broader themes. In the report, you will see the major signals, but on the halal product side, food, pharma, cosmetics, the big thing has been the disruption of the supply chain. Today, ladies and gentlemen, one of the sad impacts of COVID-19 is that the top 5 markets that are exporting halal products are in fact the top 5 countries that are hit by COVID-19. So USA, France, Brazil, India, and Russia, these are the top 5 halal product exporters, and you'll see that data point later. And they are today the biggest countries hit by COVID-19. This has had a big impact on the global halal product supply chain. A lot of countries, as a result, in OIC are seeing this as an opportunity to invest domestically, find alternative supply chains, and really focus on food security and medical essential security. So this is a key signal of opportunity. And then the wider theme across all of the other sectors, if I may, including finance, is digital acceleration of digitization, from tokenization of sukuks to, very interestingly, we have a lot of media partners today on the panel, and Australia has certainly has a lot of successes there. Online entertainment, online gaming, media, recreation are a specific example of what's happening in digitization. So with this, I'll pass it back to you, Dr. Said, on talking about Australia's role.
Thank you. Coming back to Australia and to see what the growth has been, it's been really exciting. But I have to just mention a few anecdotes with respect to Australia. Everyone you speak to, every Emirati you speak to, or a large part of Saudis you speak to, and I'm sure any of you who've been to Gold Coast or Brisbane would have seen, Australia is clearly on the map of tourism with respect to the Muslim markets, and particularly from the GCC. And as you know, the GCC is a high per capita spender in terms of halal items and the like. And I think that's going to lead to an increased interest into opportunities in Australia. The question is, how does Australia respond to that? And how does Australia take advantage of these opportunities? As you can see, the size of Islamic finance is very small now, but we believe that there's a huge opportunity that Professor Talal Yassin will be covering in the next session. And in addition to that, of course, the other opportunities that really stand out is with respect to the export of food and halal products. When I was working all over the world, I'd noticed that despite the high quality of Australian produce, we commanded a very little shelf space across the board. And we'll hear about the Islamic producers or halal producers from here. Outside of halal food, there's been halal meats. There's been very little export of Australian produce, even though despite the fact that they are seen to be of highest quality in the world and really treasured and coveted all over the world with respect to their organic approaches. In terms of the Islamic economy opportunity, I'm sure you know some of the benchmarks in this space that have emerged out of a lot of hard work invested in by a number of providers in Australia. Needless to say, Crescent Wealth is one of those, set up back in 2013, has really trailblazed and created a professional brand that a lot of Muslims are very proud to be associated with, an institutional brand with more than 10,000 members. There's also MCCA that has been a community cooperative for much longer and has also created a great amount of traction for Islamic mortgages here. But there's a lot of room to expand, as Professor Talal will tell you. In the Islamic themed media and recreation and design, Peter is on the panel, but and we'll hear also about developing diamonds. But there's, as Peter has evidenced from the Gould Studio, he's been able to make a mark sitting in Sydney on the global Islamic economy, and that's that means, and he's also received an award for that. And that means that this opportunity that we have in Australia isn't just for Australian Islamic economy customers. It's for tapping into Malaysia, Indonesia, and to the broader Islamic economy in Pakistan, India, and GCC. The question of how to tap it, I think that's what we're going to be interested to learn about from our panelists. Over to you, Rafi.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Said. So finally, to conclude, I just wanted to highlight that this year, along with the report, we have introduced an interactive dashboard that's available from Salam Gateway, and you can go and interact and look at all of the different sectors and be able to see where Australia stands in different segments. And so we welcome you to go to Salam Gateway if you haven't downloaded the report yet. Thank you again. Thank you all for joining, and look forward to hearing from Professor Talal and the rest of the panelists. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum from me.
Thank you, Dr. Syed Farouk and Mr. Rafiuddin Shiko for enlightening us with the global Islamic economy and the Australian Islamic economy as well. So without a further ado, let's get to the next part of our event. So now we have the Australian Islamic Finance Opportunity presented by Professor Talal Yassin, Managing Director of Crescent Wealth. Sir, the screen is yours.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope everybody can hear me loud and clear. Can you put your hand up? No, I'm only joking. It's we've got to get a bit of movement. And I am very privileged and delighted to be presenting alongside Dinar Standard. I apologize in advance for my deep Australian accent, but some people find it quite understandable, others not so much. So if I'm speaking too quickly in this broad accent, please let me know. Thank you all my fellow panelists, Dinar Standard and Salam Gateway. I think, and of course, Peter Gould and the Mecca Collective. I guess it's in the next few minutes, I will try and summarize my view with respect to the Islamic market, or Islamic finance and Islamic Halal Economy market within Australia. Now, I was looking through some of the graphs that were placed before us with the Rafiuddin and Sayed, and I'm a bit disappointed that Ukraine is embedding us in food. You know, it's like for Australia, that is well reputed. And I've been to Dubai and Abu Dhabi many, many times. It's a steak, Australian steak in Dubai is $120. Like, so it's the supposedly the super quality, and I think we've got to lift our game, fellow Australian ag. We've got so much better product. So that was a bit disappointing. But on to the market itself. If we look to the screen presented at the moment, you can see that from a global significance perspective, given Australia's tyranny of distance from the major markets, i.e. Europe and the US, and our relatively small population, we fight way, way above our weight, just in terms of general economic growth, stability, resilience, and the tectonic plates of Australia. What most people are not aware of, despite our very weird accents from down under, Australia is a very wealthy country. It almost competes on every level with the Norwegian countries in terms of the welfare net, but just in terms of general economic wealth. But for the sharp recession which happened from the global financial crisis, which took us 2 quarters in Australia, and we're back again, we've had solid growth for 29 years. Solid growth, not 1 quarter going back. So not even a hint of recession, with unemployment being quite significant. And that's a very important point to make before we start any discussion, to put into context the numbers that we're talking about, because it also gives context to the market. And so everybody in the globalized world, I guess, is familiar with UK and Europe, and of course the US markets. And we're kind of somewhere in the middle. And I think those facts will help explain some of our behaviors just generally. But if you look to the assets of the Australian financial institutions just on your left there, we're talking about $6,645 billion. Remember, that's for a population of just about 25 million people. Fund under management, whilst it's reporting in December quarter, 2.2 trillion. They're just a fund under management, not including superannuation funds, because they've broken them out, and the list continues. That is very significant for a country like ours, and we're very, very proud of it. And we consider ourselves an economic leader, especially in investment and pension funds, which we call superannuation funds. Thank you, Iman. Now, in terms of economic growth, which I was referring to just then, Australia is not an emerging region. And what I mean by that is that we do not grow at rates of 9 and 7 and 8%, but at 3.2 to 3.4 to 4.5 continuously, except for the couple of quarters that we referred to in 2020, the year of COVID-19. And so, and there's been some very, very solid growth. And if you look at Japan, which is our closest economic, I guess, westernized democracy, it's 0.9%. And the European area, 1.6, and so forth and so on. But we do exist, importantly, in a very significant growth sector in the Southeast Asian region, of which we are part of, and for which we form a hub, and they spokes in various ways, and vice versa. It's a very important consideration for the world's largest Muslim country, if I recall. I think India may have taken over. Maybe my facts are slightly out of date by 1 year. But Indonesia is the world's, for a long time, been the world's largest Islamic country, or certainly had the largest Islamic population. I think it's been overtaken by India. And Malaysia is a leader in Islamic finance. Both countries are very well known to us, and we are known to each other, and operate very closely in this region. A fact to remember. Next, thank you, Iman. And so going to the super interesting topic of global pension assets. Now, I'm a bit weird. I get excited about this because it's my business, but most people roll their eyes when they say this. Oh my God, how can you get excited about global pension assets? And then they start talking about formulas and ratios and sharp ratios. But I mean to say that these numbers, let's not refer to them as pension assets. Let's refer to them as the money your family has on average to retire or to live in dignity and honor once they get to a particular age. In Muslim countries, your pension, your retirement plan is your family. That's your family. We still have it maybe not even in the Arab Emirates, perhaps, but in most of the Muslim world, including the country from which I hail from originally, it's your family that's your pension plan. You know, they're going to look after you, they're going to feed you, they're going to look after your health. And I'm proud to say Australia has built a robust, resilient, and exceptionally strong system of mandatory savings. So everybody who works and those who don't can still retire in dignity and in honor, because Australians are living way, way longer than they used to live. So on average, you used to live to 65.2 for women and 64.9 for men. Today, it's in the 80s, 82 and 83. And so if you retire at 65, there's another 30 years that you got to live on a pension. And it's not relying on your having good kids, having a rida, pardon the pun. It's relying on having good savings over the long term. And if one last fact there, Iman, if you look at the percentage to gross domestic product, we're number 2 in the world after the Netherlands. And that's why I refer to the Norwegian experience, because a lot of people think of us like the UK or the US. And as a country, we are nothing like their structure. Next. Thank you, Iman. And but there are some facts about this community. 95% identify Islam and being Muslim as important to their identity in various degrees. Just under 80% are graduates or higher. And so they're a highly educated community. But interestingly, 15% own homes, while the average Australian populace has home ownership at 66%. That is quite significant. There's a big market opportunity and gap there in that area. And you note that the Muslim population estimate is 220, in 220, just under 750,000. I personally, that's a conservative number, and we only use conservative numbers. But if you run an Islamic pension fund, which we do, we know all the mosques around the country, and that's about the only time all Muslims of any hue generally attend. mosques and places of worship. And I can tell you we would count more than 1 million. So it's a much bigger opportunity for reasons we would describe at some future state. But 700, just under 7.75 million people is significant in the Australian populace. Thank you, Imam. And I'll go through this relatively quickly because the meaning to them is quite Australian-centric. Superannuation investment funds are pension funds, mandatory retirement. This gives you an average across both genders. The Sharia-compliant pool, i.e. Muslim superannuation money, is at 56 billion Australian dollars, which is about, I think, 35 billion. Bear in mind, that's just the Australian population. That is a very significant number. And Crescent Wealth manages just under 300 million. So we're 1% of the total available addressable market. Thank you, Iman. In terms of mortgage market and finance, well, the average size of a mortgage is just under 500,000. The total pool that we consider, that is considered and conservatively for Sharia compliant mortgage finance. And with that, we mean true Sharia compliance mortgage finance, because there's various levels of it about what stage of funding and what stage of more Islamic compliance we're talking about. So is it compliance light or is it compliance? There's at least a $200 billion market there, because if 95% of Muslims consider their religion important to them, if a product is Sharia compliant and passes the barbecue test, i.e. the sniff test learned globally, I call it the shish kebab test. If it sounds right, looks right, feels right, and if it's competitive and service is available to the standards of the market, which are pretty high in Australia, then that market is exceptionally addressable, present, and available. Thank you, Imam. And with that, I'd like to, I guess, conclude my 10 minutes. I think I'm just on time. Am I on time, Iman? Has the bell rung yet? Or am I over time?
Looks like you're on time.
Fantastic. As a lawyer, I can't say good morning. It takes me 10 minutes. So I'm very proud of myself and that we finished on time. And I'm happy to take any questions from anybody on the panel or anybody within the audience through Madam Chair Iman Ali.
Thank you so much, Professor Talal, for enlightening us with the Australian Islamic finance opportunity. And I must acknowledge that your Australian accent was very much understandable, mashallah, and it was better than mine though. So thanks a lot for that. And like Professor Talal said, dear attendees, should you have any questions, please feel free to put them up on the Q&A chat. And this would be for all other speakers that we have with us today. So without further ado, let's get to our final part of the launch, which is the panel discussion. So I would leave the floor to our moderator, Nirvan Jamshed Pei, co-founder of Mecca Collective. So Nirvan, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That was an immensely beneficial presentation by Professor Talal Yassin. I found that very, very interesting insights into the Australian Islamic economy and overall your forte as well. I'd like to start with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah, wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. I'm also coming to you from the capital of Australia, Canberra, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from which I'm facilitating this session, the Ngunnawal people, and I pay my respects to the elders past, present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Indigenous people around the world. My name is Nirvan Jamshed Pei, and I'm one of the co-founders of Mecca Collective. And this evening, I have the pleasure of moderating a panel of esteemed leaders and trailblazers in the Australian community who will provide us with the insights, experience, and visions on the Islamic economy in Australia and the Muslim business community overall. I'd like to also note that we will be holding a Q&A at the end of the discussion. So make sure to note down your questions and we can address them at the end of the discussion itself. Okay, great. So let's go to our panelists. So our first panelist is Zulfia Tufa, who is an entrepreneur and founder of Mod Market, Australia's largest pop-up market dedicated to modest fashion. Zulfia is active in the Australian Muslim community in various capacities, and including her role at Benevolence Australia. And that's where I know her personally as well. So assalamu alaikum, Zulfia.
Thank you for having me, Nirvan.
No worries. Our next panelist is Peter Gould, an award-winning designer, creative entrepreneur, and CDO of Gould Studio. He's also an ambassador for the UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency. Peter has had extensive involvement in the Australian entrepreneurial space and is part of various projects as well, including Mecca Collective itself. So, assalamu alaikum, Peter.
Walaikum salam. Thanks, Nirvan. Great to be here among a great panel and among friends.
Alhamdulillah. Our next guest is Kalisha Bennett, founder of Developing Diamonds. With over 14 years of experience as an active community leader, speaker and teacher and mentor of Muslim women and youth, Kalisha has worked very closely with a cross range of Muslims of diverse ages and backgrounds, and can provide us with insights into the community on the ground itself, which is a fundamental key point that we need to focus on when we're talking about a lot of these high level issues. The micro level is also of immense importance. So, assalamu alaikum, Kalisha.
Walaikum salam rahmatullah, Brother Nirvan. Thanks so much for having me and to everybody involved in this awesome online program.
Alhamdulillah. And our final and guest for the panel is Zain Kazi, who is a corporate M&A and venture capital lawyer active in the startup ecosystem in Australia. He's extensively involved in the Muslim community, being a co-founder of Wayfarers Lantern, which is a community hub that provides access to sacred knowledge, as well as the co-founder of Mecca Collective, an open collaboration between Australian Muslim startups, entrepreneurs, and investors. Assalamu alaikum, Zain.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. It's great to be here and great to see everyone here.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much for joining us today. And without further ado, I would like to get started with the discussion. So before we speak about the particular focus areas of the Islamic economy pertaining to Australia, I'd like to hear your insights on the particular juncture that we are at this particular moment in time. So based on your experience, how is the Islamic economy developing in Australia, and what are the trends that you have noticed locally and internationally as well? So I would like to pass that first question to Zain.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's a very good question. It's a very big question. And I think the speakers that we've had earlier today have shed some light on the answer to that, perhaps. I think it's really important to bear in mind where we are as an Australian Muslim community as well. So obviously, as Brother Talal hinted to, we've probably got a community of around 800,000 to 1 million Muslims in Australia. The particular juncture we're at, if we look at sort of historically, Muslim migration into Australia has sort of happened, I mean, from the Cameleer times we were here, but bulk of the Muslim population has probably been here within the last 40 years. And what we're seeing at the moment is that there's a shift in generations. So we have a lot more prevalence of Australian-born Muslims. And what that means is culturally, people are growing up in two worlds. They're occupying the Australian world I wouldn't want to say indigenous, but I'll say as people who are born in Australia, so consuming that culture and living that culture. At the same time, as Professor Talal mentioned, Islam is very important to the Muslim community as a whole. And so those people also identify as Muslims, and that's an important aspect of their lives, how they earn their money, how they spend their money. So what we're dealing with here at this particular juncture is, I think, a Muslim population that is highly educated in Australia, relatively wealthy when we compare ourselves to other parts of the world, demanding, I would say, in terms of the quality of products and services that they expect, and also seeking to contribute, I think, is another important aspect. So I think all of those things, and I may be biased, all of those ingredients come together to tell us that the entrepreneurial space, where Muslims and Australians generally are creating new goods and services that will benefit the community, and not just the Muslim community, but beyond the Muslim community, that is ripe for growth and development. And I think the only aspect that's perhaps missing in the puzzle is connection to venture capital. And that's something that we can explore as we go through the panel. But I think we're at a very exciting stage. And I think that the State of the Global Islamic Economy report reflects that. And I think there's plenty of opportunity that's highlighted in that report.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you, Brother Zain. I saw you nodding, Peter. Would you like to articulate your nod? What's your experience with the Islamic economy? Where are we heading? How's the landscape looking like?
Yeah, thanks, Nirvan. And Zain, I think, shared a great foundation. Really, it's a very promising and optimistic time, which is an unusual thing to say, in 2020. But I think in the, the overall arc of where things are going, the trajectory, looking at the report, looking at the data, but also just anecdotally meeting people, meeting young founders in Indonesia, in Turkey, in Saudi, UAE, in the US, connecting with these pockets of creative communities. And at that grassroots level, this common thread is this connection to the faith, is this connection to, I kind of think of it as like a heart-centered approach to entrepreneurship. And this is obviously, this activity has been happening for some time, but there seems like there's more and more conversations, there's more support, and there's now an increasing awareness of the importance of capital in that, in that ecosystem, and success stories that are starting to come through. And it's wonderful that we have on the call people like Rafiuddin, Dr. Said, Talal Yassin, who have really been pioneering for some years, and now I think setting foundations for others, perhaps like my own team and others that are supporting these emerging entrepreneurs. So it's a really promising time. It's great we've got Zulfi on the call and Kalisha, who I think are really shining the light of the growth and the potential of the community. So a great panel, and it's really wonderful to join, and our attendees as well. I can see the names. We've got some superstar attendees as well. So thank you so much for hosting this great event.
Alhamdulillah. And on that, the existence of this potential that exists in the Australian Muslim community to access not only the local and the international Muslim community and the Islamic economy overall, as our previous speakers have said, this is not only limited to Muslims, it's also non-Muslims participating in this economy as well. I'd like to ask the panel overall, so whoever would like to answer can go for it. Is there something that you have noticed that differentiates the Australian Islamic economy? Is there something, are there particular opportunities that we are more apt to seize upon in our context, being in Australia?
So let me jump in, and I'd love to hear from Kalisha or Zulfi, but perhaps for that particular question, I feel for whatever reason I've had been, I guess, blessed with the drive to travel over the years and get to know other creative communities. So in terms of thinking of the Australian Islamic economy, I think more broadly we're moving from a space where it was I kind of call the established Islamic economy, which is your food and your finance. And now looking forward, we're looking to fashion, we're looking to lifestyle, we're looking to digital products, and they can be really done from anywhere. It can be done from Australia, and that's literally what's happening. So in terms of the uniqueness of the Australian, what we bring, I think, of course, like every particular place will bring its own set of approaches and a kind of cultural perspective that blends. And I think Australia's in a unique place to, if you look, our literally neighboring country right near us is Indonesia, the largest Muslim population in the world. And yet, our background as a nation is a bit Eurocentric. So, bringing these blends now coming forward into the decades ahead is a really promising time. And I think it's, in this year, last thing I'll say is what's shown is that people are more comfortable, more open areas that maybe in, like, for example, MENA region might have been a bit more reluctant to do business virtually, at least in my own kind of observation. I'm very much used to doing Zoom-based calls, doing digital interaction. E-commerce has gone up this year the same amount as the last 7 years. So this mindset shifting, and that's a great thing for the Australian Islamic economy and entrepreneurial scene, because we now are operating pretty much at the same level of access as, you know, a firm in Europe or a firm in the MENA region. It won't replace that face-to-face, but it definitely helps, and I've seen that in my own team. So, you know, I just wanted to share that. But I love, you know, we could perhaps hear from Kalisha or Sophia, who, you know, are doing great things here on the ground, and I think, you know, representing the new emerging scene that we're looking forward to.
Absolutely. On that, maybe we can start with Sister Sophia. Working in the modest fashion industry itself, obviously that attracts a lot of attention from not only local communities, but also internationally. So with your work that you've been doing with Mod Market, have you seen, kind of observed some trends that, you know, the local experience is attracting a lot of international attention as well? What has your experience been like on that front?
Sure. So there definitely has been a lot of attention from very big players in the market. So, you know, if you're talking about brands like, for example, Dolce & Gabbana, you know, giving modest fashion attention, creating specifically abayas and embellished headscarves. So that's kind of how things really started, when really big brands started giving attention. Because before then, if you look about 6, 7, 8 years ago, it was a lot of smaller brands that were just frustrated women who couldn't find what they needed at catering, and then they just wanted to cater for themselves and other women like that. So it began like that, and then, you know, with the rise of modest fashion influencers, big brands got on board. But what I see now sort of happening is that a lot more brands have taken this on board, and it's not just modest fashion brands, it's global brands. So you have, you know, even Australian brands like the Iconic, but also ASOS internationally, Uniqlo. And so just so many brands are really starting to take modest fashion on board. So it's almost becoming just part of mainstream fashion in such a short time. And I think it's because people can see there's so much financial potential in it. And this last year wouldn't be a reflection of its potential, because there's been such a drop in, obviously, shopping in general. But one thing that I have really noticed is brands are even doing, like, if we're talking about grassroots and practical things, you know, even something as simple as searching. So when you want to search for something that you're looking for, it would have been very difficult to search and actually customize your search for something as simple as having long sleeves or, you know, a longer skirt. Whereas now on nearly every single online store, there is that option where you can actually click for either modest, or you can click for, you know, and customize your search for having something with long sleeves. So I think that honestly, it's something that so many brands have taken on board, and it's something for them that's obviously they get financial profit out of it. They get this whole new clientele that they can serve and really just grow their business. So I think it's just becoming a lot more mainstream now, which has its advantages and also challenges. Yeah.
Definitely. No, that's a great insight. Obviously, seeing that parallel between the local experience and the international experience. Obviously, our own community here in Australia has certain demands that are also reflected across the world, which means that the products developed in Australia, for the most part, could be then translated into the global economy in itself. And that also speaks to the diversity that we have in Australia within the Muslim community itself, coming from various different backgrounds. And Kalisha, you have worked with the Muslim community quite closely. So do you think this diversity could be an advantage for us in the Islamic economy, being in Australia and kind of translating that internationally? What has your experience been in that space?
Personally, I think what I've noticed within the community and the grassroots small business owners, who I mostly work alongside and support, small business owners, women in business, young people wanting to start up businesses, because of the diversity of their backgrounds, they're also connected to their home countries as well, or their family background, wherever they're from, and then they have access to be able to source stock for their products if they are doing a product. Or what we're also seeing is there is a lot of businesses which can also run online. So again, regardless of them being in Australia or abroad, they can operate their businesses using online platforms. What I see is a lot of women in particular with product-based businesses to do with clothing. There's a lot of health products, homemade kind of things that they sell at markets, or they have little Instagram pages where they sell. A lot of these small business owners also largely support each other. They do a lot of shout outs, a lot of buying from each other. They run little market stalls and community markets. So that's something which it's definitely a beautiful thing which you see being nurtured within the community. Probably what's lacking is the ability for businesses to grow beyond the startup phase. And myself, I'm very much an emerging entrepreneur. I've run my business for 3 years after previously running my services for free on a volunteer basis for over 10 years in the Muslim community. So deciding to become a paid professional was a big step in and of itself. And then getting the community used to the concept of paying for my time and paying for my knowledge and expertise, that has been a massive challenge as well. So we have now, coming out of the COVID phase, the growth in online learning is definitely expanding. And myself as a coach and an online coach, I have the ability to teach online or in person. The value of coaching in terms of business and organizational growth, research has shown that organizations and businesses with a coaching culture, they show greater professional development and revenue growth. So it's definitely a growing industry. There's a lot of Muslim coaches locally here, and I've heard shout outs from international coaches saying, man, the coaches in Australia, you guys are doing amazing work with the community. So a lot of different industries. It's not just product based. This is education based as well, and the internal growth of our Muslim community.
MashaAllah. Yeah, that's great. And that might be a good segue into focusing into the particular areas of the Islamic economy in Australia in itself, which obviously translates to the broader perspective as well. And we'll probably start with, given that Sis Kalisha has already addressed some of these areas, with media and recreation. So Australian Muslims have had an important footprint in the media and recreation sector locally and globally, as mentioned by the previous speakers as well. And organizations such as the One Path Network, Zillige, and Good Studio are notable examples for that. And my question to the panel is, what are the developments you have been able to observe in this sector, and what opportunities are there for Australian Muslim businesses, both locally and internationally, especially considering increased spending by various Muslim majority countries in this sector, and the reality that, as Sister Zulfia mentioned, that basically we have created a kind of this cross-border culture in our communities as well. So that might be a good question for Peter to address.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think you touched on some great insights, observations, which I think the report does share really well. And, I just do want to give that recommendation for everyone to take a look and download that report from Salam Gateway, because a lot of work goes into that research, and it's now, I think, in its 7th year, if I remember. Rafi will pull me up on that if it's not. But those reports are, they share the data, and they share, but also there's these beautiful insights from this emerging generation. So it's a great resource, a great reference, and throughout the year you see a lot of people refer to that. So, but I will share that it is, again, this unique time where because the digital ecosystem is just so interconnected that, for example, you find kids, many of us parents here will of course be watching, shows, Netflix or YouTube, from whatever source it streams, Disney Plus, it's regardless. What's fascinating to me is seeing then, for example, in Australia, kids watching Omar and Hannah, Didi and Friends, Nusa, and of course for many parents, or maybe some younger ones, Ertugrul, Dirilis Ertugrul as an example, as a global Muslim phenomena really, which had over 1 billion views in Ramadan alone, shows you the strength and from a media and recreation point of view, which I think is actually highlighted in the report really well. What is that pull? That's a tremendous pull of thirst for content. And if you combine that with this digital age of the streaming subscription mindset, where you have in Australia, for example, Stan, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, Netflix, and a number of others now streaming, and then you have emerging platforms like Alchemia or Muslim Kids TV, you have this desperate thirst for content. And the parents, many of those who had lockdown kids this year, needing more and more content. And then you've had these content creators and creatives and design teams and media teams, eager to get funding to pull. So if you think about it, it's all the ingredients are there. And I personally hope and I believe that we'll see over the next 24, 48 months, a lot more investment and success stories emerging where you have, this kind of Muslim friendly or more wholesome kids media and digital media starting to come through. We had a bit of success, alhamdulillah, with our own attempts at that through 5 Pillars and Salam Sisters. And we hope that there'll be many more of these kind of stories where you get this combination of beautifully well-designed, thoughtful, user-centric, human-centered designed consumer products and media and recreation. And hey, that could be done from Sydney or Melbourne or Perth. And it can be watched by someone in Jakarta or, Johannesburg or, Istanbul, or Jeddah. That's Islamic economy to me, because the shared values, there's this shared alignment. And hey, I also think it's a great way to introduce other people curious into certain aspects. We have a window perhaps into our heart-centered approach, some of the things that Muslims hold dear, packaged in a way that's compelling, visually beautiful, exciting. That's also a great opportunity. So, it's a great alignment if we can get it right, inshallah.
If I might add to that as well, I think Peter's touched on some really good points. And if you think about the sort of blurring of lines between we don't want to call it the two economies, but if we distinguish between, say, the global economy generally and the global Islamic economy, a lot of Muslims consume Netflix, right? And so there's no reason why it can't go the other way. And I think that opportunity is really, really remarkable and a really big one. So there's no reason why content that is created perhaps with a Muslim angle or a Muslim lens or for a Muslim audience, perhaps, why that can't be appealing to the global population more broadly. And I think we see that in many other industries. So we see that with halal food, for example, with tayyib food or other concepts of organic food more broadly, and even with fashion, as Sister Zulfiya sort of indicated, that these things have become mainstream. And I think that is where it can be difficult to sometimes capture from a data perspective because there's that blurring of lines, it's not crystal clear, but that just speaks to the size of the opportunity. It really is bigger than perhaps we may think. And as the panelists and speakers have spoken about earlier, the trends have surprised us. And so that's an exciting thought.
And also, if I could add to what you were saying, both Peter and Zain, it's beautiful to see that it is becoming mainstream and that so many people are jumping on board, and there is that potential influence that we can have. And by the same token, it's so important to also realize that because the intention is to serve the Muslim community, it's so important to support the actual grassroots people and the Muslim people who are trying to make that happen, because there are people who may have better finances or who may have better networks who actually go ahead and create those things and serve our community, whereas there are people who really could do so much and who are Muslim and whereas they might not have the resources. So I'm just really glad with Mecca Collective to hear the work that you guys are doing and other organizations who are doing similar things, because we really need to support even the people Kalisha was talking about, like those grassroots people who may not have those resources, but who want to make, amazing TV shows for children but just don't have the resources.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a key message to take away from our conversation as well, which is, support Muslim businesses. I mean, for us to develop products in a way that is obviously representative of our community, and as well something that we're proud of, like something like Crescentwell, for example. These businesses need to be supported, and we need to stand behind them, and obviously tolerate sometimes that there will be hiccups. For example, I can say that during this lockdown, I subscribed to Alchemia, for example, and obviously there's a limited amount of content, but I absolutely support the product that is being developed there, and I think it's one of those projects that sometimes one has to be a little bit patient with. But I think it's key that we support Muslim businesses and entrepreneurs and people on the ground. And I think that's a very, very important issue.
Yeah. And Nirvan, I was just going to share, this is what, not meant to be a shout out that was planned, but just came to me when you mentioned the question. If I'm not mistaken, Talal, perhaps you could choose Crescent helped support recently the Furnace, which is, I think, I haven't seen it, but by all accounts, a beautifully produced film that's very important. And if I am guessing, it looks like a fantastic way of the ecosystem supporting and many people benefiting. I don't know, Talal, I know you're not on the panel, but of course you're on the panel. That was a good example, I think, of media working with the ecosystem to support everyone.
Yes, thank you very much, Peter. I think The Furnace is a not a Hollywood A-class movie yet, but it will be iconic in terms of Australia because I think it represents in Muslim history 150 years ago and beyond. And very much like our global panelists would understand the Wild Wild West and how the West was won in the American story. Well, this was our Wild Wild West. And Muslim Cavaliers from Afghanistan, from the whole Pakistan, the whole region, and their Sikh counterparts really helped discover Australia. And we at Crescent Wealth thought it was a really important story to be told. What it has to do with global pension products is absolutely zero, but it talks to our who we are, what we stand for, and the broader dawah. A different way of putting it is about building our ecosystems. And I'm really, really proud to see sisters in small and larger businesses having a shot and being entrepreneurial. And we take it as a matter of privilege and pride to support anybody who gives it a shot from our community.
Yes,
yeah, nicely said. And sorry, I also from that end of town, I also thought, I know I want to come back to Kalisha. I didn't mean to take over your panel, Nirvan, but I feel fortunate that I happen to know some of these individual examples of leadership, like Crescent supporting the Furnace. And I know Kalisha, I've seen firsthand, grassroots, transforming Perth and creating this beautiful legacy there, but also, mashallah, now in Sydney, this, on the ground, emerging leaders, young people, especially women. And she's a very humble person, so she probably won't share, but, I've seen firsthand those stories and how that is really empowering the entrepreneurial spirit, that confidence. Anyway, Kalisha, I'll let you share, but I wanted to make sure it wasn't just Talal who got the shout out. I think you deserve it as well, mashallah.
Thank you, Peter, for the shout out and throwing me under the bus awkwardly. Yeah, no, alhamdulillah, being involved in the community is obviously...
Oh, Kalisha, your mic's just a little bit softer, just sharing, maybe bring it a little bit closer. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess for me, working with the community, that's my heartbeat, really. That's my... the drive for me personally, my life's purpose and my life's mission. But early on, maybe between 5 to 8 years ago, I started learning about the concept of being able to earn an income through the time that you give and through the teaching and the volunteering and the creation of community projects. And I had to think about, okay, number one, taking the work seriously in terms of valuing myself and my time and expertise. And then how do I feel about charging the community for it, and how will the community respond to that? So I think that's something that's interesting, and it is definitely evolving, seeing the way our community value different things. And, I joke about the term free sabilillah, because that used to be a very common term, requested, free, please sister, free. Or a sister goes to another sister's business, gets her hair cut or something at a Muslim hairdresser, and then requests a $50 discount. But if they went to somewhere else, they would never dare do such a thing. And what I'm noticing is that there is a shift in that. There is greater valuing of people's time, of people's efforts and energies. And yeah, I think looking at, the work and the projects that I've been doing and thinking about how do I turn this business into a profitable business, and what does that look like for me, who's a very grassroots person. I'm not highly educated. I'm not a corporate woman, as such, but I can do a lot of things. I have a lot of skill sets, and I have I have a lot of different abilities and ability to grow and adapt. So again, even the self-learning journey of business people and entrepreneurs who is going to kind of take us under their wing and mentor us and literally invest in us, in terms of yes, potentially finances being invested in as small businesses and believed in, but also invested in terms of training and teaching small business people, young people, women, how to get bigger and how to grow, rather than chasing the tailcoats of big corporations and the big guns that we might see around us, in our cities, in our countries, internationally. How about we look down to those who could use a helping hand and let us all grow together? I think that's something that we could really improve on and work on. As much as we want to chase and race forward, we mustn't forget, the person next door. And we know that this is an Islamic teaching, Islamic principle too, that there is no true competition in business. There's enough to go around. Allah is rich, Al-Ghani. Allah is the provider. He has enough to give all of us equally. So, we should really lend that helping hand. And, Peter's really modeling that with how he's been able to support me and other members of the business community.
That's an excellent insight. Thank you, Sister Kalisha. And on that note, I think it's good to hone in a little bit on this particular issue, which is women entrepreneurs. And as an entrepreneur yourself, and as a Muslim woman yourself, who has worked very closely with other Muslim women, what are the developments and trends you've been able to observe in the space of women entrepreneurship in the Australian Muslim community? And particularly, I would like to also ask you, what are some of the unique challenges and the unique opportunities for Muslim women at this point in time? Again, taking some of the previous discussion points into consideration.
Yeah, I'd say that when it comes to what's trending amongst Muslim women in business here within Australia, we do have a smaller amount of women who really have the know-how. They've perhaps studied business, or they've grown up or had a mentor around them who's been able to coach or support them, or maybe their spouse is business minded and they've been able to build really strong businesses. And then you've got the grassroots women who are working from home, their mothers, there's a lot of them too, mashallah, and they're really focused on the wholesome things, food businesses, cupcake businesses, soaps, health products, personal care products, but they're also focused on benefit and contribution is a big part of what they do. And subhanAllah, you see that, they're earning very little, but they're giving a lot of it back, straight back to the community. And, this really, we have to realize that this is bringing the barakah within our community. Why give Johnson's & Johnson's your, $20 a week on personal care products when that $20 could benefit a sister and her family, or a single mum who's struggling? And, it's very important that us as a Muslim community as well, really look towards where we can, put our dollar into where is most blessed and where is going to bring most benefit to ourselves and to our community. Again, the challenges, what are the challenges for a lot of small businesses? The startup dollars. I remember I think I had a couple of $100 in the bank when I started mine, paying a designer to design my logo. My coach, my business coach, personal development coach, had to give me like a discount because, he really wanted me to start my business and actually forced me to, and said, you need to do this. It's time, and then again, when businesses get to a certain level, how do they grow to the next level? Being supported in that regard as well. We don't, alhamdulillah, there are some government supported. Like you can go to your local council and get free business advisory in some councils. Like for example, in my locality, you can get $400 of business advisory for free. So that's really good. You can connect with your local business training and support, which are, most of the time for free. But within our own Muslim community, alhamdulillah, we have, things like Startup Online, we have Mecca Collective and these things which are emerging, which is excellent. We have also the Muslim Women's Business Club by Sister Suret Hussein. We have these little hubs which are developing, which I think are really important for us to come together and feel supported. Because as most people know, the entrepreneurial journey is a very lonely one. When people have big visions, big dreams, you're often, a lot of people close to you and around you don't quite understand where your head's at and what you're envisioning. So to be able to find like-minded people, it's a very powerful thing.
Yeah, that's some great insight. Thank you, Kalisha. And just to also keep a little bit the time in mind, Zufia, could you please give some of your insights in this area? So you've been nodding throughout Sister Kalisha's answer, and you resonated with her response. So, what are your insights into this particular area of focus?
A lot of head nodding because I could understand and personally relate to every single thing you spoke about, Kalisha. Even how you're talking about going to the local council and trying to find a mentor that way, because I've been there and done that. So I'll keep it short. Two things. The first thing is working as a female in business, especially in the fashion industry, modest fashion industry. A lot of the people I deal with are women. So what's great about that is there's that flexibility and the understanding of being able to actually have your business hours from 8 p.m. until midnight. That's when all the business calls are happening. During the daytime, that's when people are busy with their families, busy with their children. So I think working, having that sisterhood and that understanding and just being able to support each other that way. Or, when you can bring your children to meetings, you can have a crying child. All of these things may sound very unprofessional, but if you factor women into the business force in their entirety and not as just their professional, but if you take women as a whole, that's what women come with, because we're the ones who birth the children. So you'll have a breastfeeding mum and you can have that business meeting. So I think that's one of the strengths of having women support each other in business. One of the challenges that I've faced and that I've heard other women have experienced is because a lot of people who are established in the industry or who've had a lot of time to really establish themselves are males, it's very, very difficult to actually get into a network because it seems like there's already a lot of cliques and networks. And I found that just really being able to be taken seriously or be mentored or actually be able to get involved with a network, I found it was very difficult. And so I found myself knocking on many doors and being rejected many times, which is part of business. And it makes you more resilient. But I do feel like with the males, just even within the Muslim community, it's very important to make sure that you're always looking to see which women are there that are doing something that you can actually, not just financially, it's more introducing, just basically using your networks, I think, as a business person to support other business people is really important, especially if you're already established more so than other people. So that's something that I've experienced.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, definitely.
Brother Nirvani? The sisters make a really, really good point, and I am an entrepreneur as well, a few years older, just a few, but the burn is real. It's exactly the same when I told people I want to start a pension fund for Muslims, and people thought you were crazy. I didn't quite go to the council. I spoke to the mayor and he couldn't help me. But the point is, today in Australia, we have institutions, and it seems to me you guys are calling out for something like the Crescent Institute, where we have a mentoring program where there are people who are your age and slightly older and approaching kind of my age. And a lot of them are women. There's some really successful Muslim women out there, and we're about connecting them. So feel free to reach out. especially for entrepreneurs, because you can hang around other fellow entrepreneurs, which is great because you live the pain together. And I guess from my point of view, you know, problems shared are problems spared, but you need the helping hand of someone who can probably provide some finance or somewhere to go or to do something. And there's, alhamdulillah, a very good network around the country with the Crescent Institute that I can recommend.
Thank you, Professor Talal. This is the community spirit that we really need, obviously, to develop the Australian Islamic economy further. And yeah, so just to remind the audience as well that we will have a Q&A at the end of this session. So please do note down your questions and do write them into the question box so we can address them. But just to take a more macro perspective again, and think about the Australian Islamic economy overall and where it is headed. One final question I would like to ask is, what would you like to, or in this particular juncture that we are at, coming out of COVID-19, coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic itself, what would you like to see take place in the Muslim business community at this point in time, and where do you think we are headed? What's the future looking like? So I'll pass that question to Brother Zain.
Look, it's a really interesting question. I don't have the crystal ball, so to speak, but I think, I mean, the report is really, really insightful in terms of providing what we consider to be a pathway over the next few years. It's clear that the global Islamic economy is resilient, and it sounds like it's going to bounce back within a pretty relatively short period of time. I think what we'll see, I think one of the interesting things that we'll see is the emergence of new brands, new businesses. I think that's something that's really probably part of a more global trend around the pandemic itself. So, you know, people are, as we've all experienced, you know, living at home, working from home, changing the way we do things, changing our behaviors, wearing masks, etc. What that does is, I think it has the impact of really shaking up the way people see how things should work and how things can work. And I think that opens up the opportunity for new businesses to emerge, new products to emerge, customer-centric products to emerge, I think, and that's a trend that I think will really be prominent over the next 5, 10 and beyond years. You know, the focus on what is it that the customer really wants and addressing those pain points and addressing those hopes and dreams, I suppose, of customers, rather than being product focused or competitor focused. So those things I think will emerge. I think the opportunities within the markets are huge. So, you know, we've spoken about the Islamic finance opportunity and the halal food opportunity, but beyond that, there's so much opportunity within Islamic travel. You know, Professor Talal was talking about how many people actually travel in, and Dr. Said brought it up as well, how many people travel into Australia, Muslim people that travel into Australia. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And I think the things that will emerge are new brands will emerge. Inshallah, you know, we'll create great Muslim brands that serve beyond the Muslim community. And I'd really love to see that, inshallah.
Great, Zain. I'm just going to step in. I think Nirvan may have just frozen. I'm not too sure. I'm just going to borrow his role for a moment. But Zain, I know one thing. We were looking forward to seeing your
the future
presentation
at this moment. Yes.
Nirvan, unfortunately, we can't hear you well. Perhaps once you figure out your connection, once you join back.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you perfect. Nirvan, please go ahead.
Is the connection?
Right. Unfortunately, Nirvan, we still can't hear you. Perhaps
okay, thank you so much. Sorry for the interruption. I was hoping that's not going to happen, but thank you, brother. Yeah.
Okay, Nirvan, if I could just suggest you, perhaps if you can reconnect. Until then, I would like to say what Nirvan was next about to say. Unfortunately, and apologies from my side, we happened to miss Mr. Zain Ismail Qazi's presentation on the Australian Muslim entrepreneurship and venture capital. So Mr. Zain, if you don't mind, if you could quickly enlighten us with the entrepreneur and venture capital ecosystem of Australia, and perhaps it very well links to the panel discussion that we're having with lively entrepreneurs here. So Mr. Zain, the screen is yours, please.
No worries. Yeah, no, it's interesting. Look, it wouldn't be a Zoom call if we didn't have some connection issues. So this is very much in line with what we should expect, perhaps. Look, initially when I prepared to say a few words, it was only 5 minutes that I was going to say a few words around Australian Muslim entrepreneurship and venture capital. And it was really to sort of lead into the topics that we were probably going to cover in the panel discussion. I think we've probably covered them in quite some depth. If I sort of have any remarks on the Australian Muslim entrepreneurship and venture capital space, it would probably be a couple of points that I'd like to make. The first thing I think is understanding that the Australian Muslim population, while it's small, is one that punches above its weight. And I think that's something that every person watching this should really bear in mind and take some confidence from. Alhamdulillah, we're a blessed and very lucky and fortunate Muslim community. And I think with that, we have remarkable opportunity, but I think also separately, we could say a lot of responsibility perhaps. But from that, I think one trend that emerges is that people in Australia who are thinking about, running a business or starting a venture, starting an enterprise, the conditions couldn't be better. The opportunities are there. It's not a perfect world. It's never going to be. But in terms of how good we could have it compared to other parts of the world, we've got a really, really strong opportunity. Now, as the sisters pointed out from the panel discussion, access to capital is always a barrier. It's always a difficulty. It's never something that's really readily available. But there is capacity in the Muslim community. And Mecca Collective, without plugging, that's one of the reasons it was created. It's to connect Muslim startups, entrepreneurs, and investors, because that's something that's really, really important. And it's something that's essential fuel that allows businesses to go from being ideas to real contributors and ending up in a report like the one we have in front of us. So that's something that's important. So, access to capital is important. I think the other thing that's in Australia that we have that's unique is we have a lot of government initiatives and programs that the Muslim community is not necessarily aware of. So we have fantastic organizations like Startup Victoria, Launch Vic, which are not necessarily geared around the Islamic economy, but they are geared around great businesses and great ideas that have a target market that can be reached. Now, it's probably incumbent on the Muslims knowing that Indonesia is sitting there, Malaysia is there. It's a huge market. It's a huge accessible market. So it's incumbent on us to create products and services that serve those markets. And I think that opportunity is there. And if the numbers make sense, the investment comes. And so I think, we can look at with some optimism around the opportunities that are presented within the report. And I think, opportunities around modest fashion, pharmaceuticals and well-being. These are trends that are beyond the Islamic economy, but prevalent and nuanced within the Islamic economy. Trends like cosmetics and beauty, again, they cross over between Islamic and non-Islamic audiences, travel and media. I mean, those things they're all areas that we could build businesses in and build brands in and, really put some businesses and brands on the map. I think the other thing that's really important to note that I wanted to focus on is the opportunity for women within the Islamic economy and broadly. We're seeing the emergence of many female entrepreneurs. We've got some great success stories within the community. People building businesses out of really grassroots needs. So for example, we've got many examples, but one is organic food business, delivery businesses that have thrived within the COVID environment. And those businesses can scale up from being delivery to a few friends to multi-million-dollar enterprises that can then influence non-Muslim audiences. That's the sort of thing that's possible and that we'd love to see. And so you know, I would encourage everyone that's here today, download the report, have a read through it. There's so much in there that's positive. There's so much in there that you can gain and insights that you can really benefit from. And it makes you think about, what is the Muslim contribution to Australia going to be from an economic perspective? Because that's one of the things that we're here to do, is to contribute positively to the economy, to the people that are here among us, and to our own communities. So my, I guess, closing message, if I have one, is download the State of the Global Islamic Economy report, read through it, find any things, any information and insights that you can benefit from, and then have a go. Reach out to organizations like Crescent Wealth, Crescent Institute, Mecca Collective, and, you know, let's do some great things together, inshallah.
That's great. Thank you. Apologies for the technical difficulty just before. Just to make sure, can you hear me all clearly now? Alhamdulillah, okay, at the time. Is it still unstable?
It's quite better. Yep.
Okay. I'll just to entertain some of the last points for the panel discussion. First of all, I'd like to thank all the panelists for joining us at the panel and for providing their insights. It's been a really wonderful discussion, being able to connect with leaders in the Muslim community in Australia from a broad spectrum, from the macro level down to the micro level, to working with individual Muslim members of the community, to having a broader perspective of the Australian entrepreneurial scene as a whole, whether that be Muslim or non-Muslim. We have one question that we can address here, which was by Brother Mustaqiza Zakaria, and he asked that since Islamic financial industry is one of the most important industries in the Islamic market, are there any opportunities of cross-border financial facilities to access Islamic capital for startup? If you have any further questions, do ask that, but if I can refer to the panel plus one, being Professor Talal Yassin, to address this question, that would be great.
Thank you very much. Would somebody like to answer that? Or obviously you'd like me to answer?
Dr. Said answered the question in the
I'm happy to answer it as well. I think we have to delineate what Islamic financial institutions are like, right? They are, as you know, debt heavy in the sense of their capital structure. So they aren't into equity or startup funding, particularly at the high risk stage of funding. However, what we are seeing, and this is the most fundamental or interesting issue, is that there is a lot of interest across the Islamic world, from Asia, from the Middle East, for startups. And it's agnostic to who you are, right? Whether you're Islamic or not, they don't care, right? But if you can find a opportunity, and the Islamic economy is a huge opportunity, and we've seen a lot of startups get funded. If you can find an opportunity that has a large addressable market, right? And if you have a solid traction to prove your case, as Peter was saying, and you have the ability to have a team, an execution team that's also like we have some here as well, who are able to actually demonstrate that on a consistent basis, you're able to deliver value to that market. There's plenty of capital available, and that capital flow to you. I think the fundamental issue that we've had as a community, and we can help as well, and we've started this, and Zain is doing this in Australia as well. We started this in the Middle East, but we invest across the world, is actually fund, in terms of the investments, these kind of startups, and we have an opportunity to actually support institutions like that, and actually mentor them. And if Rafi will tell you, from the early days, we've been tracking the Islamic economy startups, and a number of them. You've heard of Wahid Invest, who started off as an award recipient about 7 years ago. You've seen Talal Yassin 7 years ago. It was a concept in his mind. And so there are a number of startups across the board, but I have to emphasize the opportunity isn't just about Australia. The opportunity is if you can, in modest fashion or wherever else, if you can demonstrate, like companies in Turkey have demonstrated, that you can tap the whole Islamic market from Turkey or from Australia, and you can grow it. The world's your oyster. And I think that's where I think we should be focusing as a community. And the capital will flow, and I'm happy to also introduce individuals here as well to other sources of capital in the region.
Thank you so much, brother Said Farouk, for your insight on this particular question. Would the other panelists like regarding this this particular question as well? Otherwise, we can go ahead and close the discussion. Yep. Okay. Great. So, unfortunately, we have run out of time at this juncture. I'd like to thank again all the panelists for attending and for providing their insights in this particular area. And the panel plus one being with Professor Talal Yassin, and another plus one, which was Dr. Said Farouk. So thank you so much for your insights. And the remaining questions we will be able to answer offline. So I would like to hand it back to Sister Iman. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thanks a lot, Nirwan, and our prestige panelists and speakers on board. Before we close the session, I would like to ask Mr. Rafiuddin Shiko if he has any closing remarks, please.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. This has been a fascinating discussion. As analysts of this global Islamic phenomenon, economy, what's fascinating for us is really hearing what's happening on the ground in all of the communities around the world, and how we as Muslims are playing a part of contributing to the global economy. And I think I'd like to congratulate the community in Australia. I think it's just incredible to hear the sentiments of entrepreneurship. And I will say, this is the same sentiments are happening across many communities around the world, especially in the non-Muslim majority countries of US, UK, France. Certainly the dynamics of the Muslim majority countries are different, but the environment you're in and the entrepreneurship and the energy that exists within American Muslim entrepreneurs is incredible. I'd like to thank Talal and the leadership and entrepreneur, and we need leaders who can become examples and role models for the community. But to me, from what I hear, what I wanted to also commend you and encourage all of you, the young entrepreneurs, is to think bigger, in fact. This opportunity is not just about the Muslim community in Australia. This is about serving the humanity as a whole. The Islamic economic system has a lot to contribute, and we're already contributing at a global level. And I think you should be proud to see, by virtue of the report and many other activities, that you're part of a global ecosystem. The leadership that Crescent Wealth is providing is not limited to Australia. You're inspiring investments and opportunities across the region. I would say I would like to congratulate and thank my friend Peter, and specifically Gold Studio, who have actually produced, helped design, and made us look good. And so I'd like to really thank you for contributing at a global level. A shout out to Nick Farncombe, who's also on the call, an Australian who has played a pivotal role on our success. So Nick, thank you as well. And I think finally, I would say, listen, the big picture here is how you can help Australia succeed. And I think there's a lot for you as entrepreneurs, not just to help Muslims in Australia succeed, but Australia succeed. And I think I would leave with that. And actually, I'd leave with an ayah from the Quran that really shows how we are bringing the world. We're part of a global community, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Hujurat. And I'll just do the translation. "O mankind, we have created you from male and female, and we have made you tribes and sub-tribes that you may know one another." It's beautiful to know our community in Australia as it is across the world. And again, congratulations and thank you all.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Rafiuddin Shiko. And yep, sorry.
Sorry, Brother Talal, I think if you had any final comments, or Dr. Saeb, please.
Now, I know I talk a lot, but that's enough for tonight. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you. Thank you. All
Dr.
right.
Sayed. All right, so it's time, unfortunately, to close this session. Thank you all once again for being with us all this while. And I would again like to highlight what Mr. Rafiuddin Shikwa said, a key takeaway for all of us, how you as an entrepreneur can help Australia succeed. And for all of us, the question is how we can help the Islamic economy succeed in this space. Thank you once again to our prestige panelists and speakers, and of course our attendees for being here. We hope you found this session useful. Do follow us on social media to know more about our events, and grab your complimentary report on salamgateway.com. I leave you with that. Thanks a lot and see you soon. Assalamu alaikum.